Welcome to episode 15 of the Multinational Money Podcast.
Welcome to the Multinational Money Podcast. I'm Jonny, your host, and if you're interested in financial freedom, expat life, and making the most of global opportunities, then this is your podcast. Today, I'm joined by Saira, a British national who relocated from London to live in Valencia with her husband and young daughter. She works remotely, and in this episode, we're going to be talking a bit about her experience of moving from the UK to Spain and how she's finding life here compared to how it was back in the UK. So with that said, let's get right into the episode. Okay, Saira, welcome to the Multinational Money Podcast.
Hi, Jonny, great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. It's great to have a quote-unquote like normal guest, so someone who's not like a influencer or out there on like YouTube or Instagram. But I think it means that, you know, people can relate to you a little bit more in their experiences that you've been through in comparison with their own. So it's great to have you, really.
Great, yeah, thanks. Yeah, very normal person here. No big Instagram account or anything.
Yeah, perfect. So start by telling us a little bit about yourself, Saira, where you are from, your background, etc., and how you ended up in Spain, of course.
Yeah, so I am currently living in Valencia, Spain. I'm British, sort of born and brought up there and lived there for most of my life. I grew up in the north of England and just moved from London. I work in basically management consulting, and I work remotely for an American company. So not a digital nomad as such. I'm very much fixed in one place, but have been working remotely on and off for quite a lot throughout my career. And yeah, as I said, before moving here about a year ago, just over a year ago, we were based in London and there for a really long time. But my husband and I and our daughter decided to take the plunge and move. So I've been following you for some time.
Ah, amazing. Yeah, great to hear that the content was helpful for you as well in moving to Spain. So really happy to hear that. And how you finding it since you moved over? Are you enjoying Valencia? It's one of my favorite cities in Spain, I think, from having visited it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was a real leap of faith. I had been here once before, and my husband twice, even though he is Spanish, he's from Galicia, but he had not been to Valencia much. Valencia is great. I mean, we had done our research despite not having been here much, and we didn't want to swap, like for like. We felt like Madrid might be a bit busy like London, and same with Barcelona, so we were hoping for a bit of a quieter vibe in Valencia, and I think we've really got that here, and it's so green, and we've got lucky in the last year, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it. So what was kind of the motivation behind the move to Spain, to come over here?
Yeah, so we were living in London, and as you might have friends or, other people who are watching or listening, I feel like in London, a lot of people come to a certain point, any big city, people come to a certain point where they're like, do we still want to live in the center of the city? We had a 3 or 4-year-old around the time we were thinking about this. And I think we had a few options, right? Move to the suburbs of London, move back up north where I grew up, or try and move to Spain. And we actually had tried to move to Spain back in 2018. Didn't go well. It was really hard to find the right job situation. That was the main thing. And so we had eaten humble pie back then, and we said, why don't we try one more time, basically, particularly because it was a good time. Our daughter still hasn't, but had not started primary school, so it felt like a good time. So we gave it a shot, and really just like a lifestyle thing more than anything. I don't think I would have really enjoyed all the commuting back and forth from the London suburbs. So I was hoping to, try and at least, if we stay here forever is a different question, but at least spend a few years living here and seeing how the life is.
Yeah, I spent time in the suburbs of London a couple of times as well. Didn't live for a long time there, but, now and again spent time living there. But yeah, going into central London, I remember it was just incredibly hectic and very busy, overwhelming, definitely for a family with children. I can imagine. And
it's not an easy family with kids. It's like prams, up and down trains, the whole thing. It's also really expensive, and it has become more expensive, and to the point where we just didn't feel that was sustainable. So that was definitely a contributing part. I mean, London's great, they say, when you're young or rich.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
But I tap out of both of those categories.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you said your husband is Spanish. So that means you were eligible to apply for residency in Spain as a family member of an EU citizen.
Yeah.
So that, in theory, is a more straightforward process than the likes of the digital nomad visa, the NLV, golden visa when it was around. How do you find the process of applying for residency in Spain?
Yeah, it was, we'd heard a lot of scare stories. It was fine. I mean, it didn't take particularly long. There was a lot of paperwork. And one of the things that I didn't realize is that it is actually a visa. And therefore it can actually be rejected despite on paper being espoused legitimately. You basically need to show your marriage papers, which makes sense, and also some, means. So a job for the person who's the EU citizen, or funds, and all of that just takes a lot of compilation. So we worked with a lawyer to do it. It was relatively straightforward. Once we had applied, we heard back within 2-3 months. But I will say within that period, I was traveling quite a bit for work, and when you have an open application, it's just a bit nerve-wracking, like what will immigration board officials say? And yeah. I definitely had to show them the whole stack of papers and explain a few times. So never a problem, but I recognize fully that, this is definitely one of the easier visa types, and it just takes some time.
Yeah, definitely one of the easier visa types, but interesting what you said, that there is still the possibility of something going wrong and getting rejected. So something for people to keep in mind, nevertheless.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. How long did the whole process take from applying for the visa to having it approved in your case?
So, I think we got empadronamiento in late October, maybe early November, and I was approved Feb, so 3 months, just okay. Over 3 months. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I hear is not bad.
Yeah, I was going to say, by Spanish, by Spanish residency application standards, it's probably not too bad.
Yeah. No, the bureaucracy wasn't too bad on that piece.
That's good. Glad to hear that. And so you talked a bit about your job when you introduced yourself. Were you already in this remote position that you're in now when you applied for residency?
When I applied for residency, yes, or when we moved here, I applied from Spain. But sort of to be able to take the decision to move to Spain, I was not in a remote position, and I actually thought with my old job I'd be able to move. They'd be okay for me to work remotely given pandemic, and we were not remote, but we had a lot of people scattered around the UK, and we didn't really have a lot of office presence. So I actually thought it would be okay, and it certainly was not. So that was a surprise back in April 2023. And obviously by then we were relatively close to the time when we did move, which was October, and we had some things in place. So then it was that, I would say that was the most stressful bit of this whole decision to move, and even the process was how can I, and I say my husband is a teacher, so maybe it's a bit easier to be a teacher anywhere in the world, but I work in a kind of specific industry. I have to work in a few different organizations. Which one will fit career-wise and also let me be based remotely? So there was a lot of hustling between April 2023 and July 2023. Luckily, it worked out. There's a lot of networking and trying and luck, honestly. Right place at the right time. As I say, back in 2018, it was the opposite. Nothing was working out. And in 2023, everything was working out. So I feel like that was also a little bit of a sign from the universe, if you will, that this was the right time. But yeah, that was a good day in July. And then, so when I moved in October, I had a position at this new job, and it was a big move and a new job. And I was then able to shift onto my Spanish contract once I had my residency and everything set in. So stressful few months for sure, moving, but also just figuring out a lot of new job and a lot of paperwork.
I can imagine, yeah. But that Spanish work contract with your new employer, yeah, I'm sure it gave the reassurance to the authorities to approve your visa, yeah. All right, the next thing, something that I get a lot of comments on the channel about people who are interested in it, and it's one of the big things that attracts people to Spain as remote workers, freelancers, digital nomads is the Beckham Law. Now, I understand you do benefit from the Beckham Law. We'll obviously share as much as you're comfortable with, but what made you choose to apply for the Beckham Law, and how is it helping you from like a tax or overall financial perspective?
Yeah, so once I had my immigration visa piece approved, that's when I was then eligible to look at, applying for the Beckham Law. I had heard about it prior to moving, and yeah, I mean, your channel does a lot of education around that, but one of the main things is you have to like not have been tax resident in Spain for the last few years, and there's lots of other criteria, but it basically, yeah, it's kind of a favorable tax regime, and I think the idea of it is to encourage people to kind of bring income in and be based remotely in Spain. And if I didn't have that, I think my sort of financial situation would probably be quite similar to what we had previously in London. So, always great to see if there's a way to just try and compensate financially. It's a big move, very expensive, to take that decision and move everything and buy new furniture and lawyers. So, great way to kind of, if we can, see if we could benefit. And that also, where we did the application by a lawyer, and there was a little bit more back and forth, and they wanted a bit more information. Again, it was definitely, it could have been rejected, and I have friends in the city and in Spain who have been rejected and have had to sort of apply and reapply. So straightforward, but at the same time you can get rejected and they may ask you something else. So in my case, that took a few months as well, around 3 or 4 months for that to finally come through. Yeah, it wasn't just a simple 1 month to the next kind of thing.
I see. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because it is very specific profiles that are eligible for the Beckham Law. So good to hear that yours was within the eligible profiles, let's say.
Yeah.
And it is, something that, a lot of people think, oh yeah, I'll come here and I'll get the Beckham Law, but not everyone can apply for it like that. So something, to check with a lawyer, like in your case, you check with a lawyer. So always suggest people check with a lawyer when they want to explore things like the Beckham Law.
Yeah, and we did have a couple of chats with them prior to moving, of course, like both on immigration, but also on Beckham Law, because that was also a big benefit for us. So we wanted to make sure that at least in concept we were eligible. So it's good to find that out before you make the leap.
Yeah, absolutely. So Valencia, you gave the reasons why you wanted to move there, and you've said like how much you like it. You also wrote an article about Valencia, and you shared like kind of the key things that you like about the city. Tell us a little bit more about the positive things that you see in Valencia as a city. Yeah.
Well, some really practical things, and then some more sort of maybe more societally or community-based things. Practically, this is crazy that I'm going to say this first, but it is a very flat city, which makes it really child-friendly, right? Like prams, scooters, buggies, or bikes. That can be quite difficult, previous places we've lived. So this is easy to go out with your child. There's a lot of green spaces. We live quite close to the Turia, which is a really long park, as you know, that runs through the center of Valencia, and it makes it accessible basically at any point that you are within the center of the city. You can always reach the park, which is a really big benefit, especially again with kids, but even without, like you see people just relaxing in there all the time and spending whole days there, which is amazing sort of relaxing vibe the city gives off. Amazing weather year round, of course, have to mention that. It is not always hot, but it is often blue skies, sunny. I would say a few days ago it became really cold. It's December 12th. So it's nice actually to have that change of season again and appreciate the warmth again, because obviously we get jaded, right? It's too hot, but I very much appreciate it 3/4 of the year. And I don't know how they've managed that here, but it has quite a small town feel. It is a small city, but there are sort of this very community feel. One thing I really love about it, and I'm sure this is similar in other places and cities in Spain, but you see people of all generations around, out and about in Valencia, which I would say is quite different to the UK. There's really young kids, older people. I mean, they're the ones having the best social lives, so that's nice to see, and I think it also just paints a picture of like maybe it would be good to stay for a few years and live out life here because there's a lot to do. And I think the last thing is that it feels very Spanish, but also has some international aspect to it. I've told you, already mentioned that we are British Spanish family, not just an expat British family. So we don't need to just hang out with international expat kind of feeling, and we didn't want to move to a place that's like that. But it has a good mix of both of those things.
Yeah. As you were talking, we're both Northerners, as you said. I started to draw a lot of parallels between like Newcastle, where I'm from, and Valencia. A lot of what you said, I think, is applicable for Newcastle as well. Like, it is a relatively, not a big city, but, it's a big enough city. But it still has a very, very community kind of feel in it as well. But,
and people say hi to each other on the street like they do in the north.
Exactly, yeah. But Valencia, I think is one of my favorite cities in Spain as well. Yeah.
Nice.
And there's a reason why it ranks top of like the favorite cities for expats to relocate to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have to ask you as well, whilst we're on the subject of Valencia, hopefully you and your family have not been too affected by the recent flooding that took place there. No,
we haven't been affected. The centre was very much untouched, but it is just crazy to think just 2-3 kilometres away, really close, south of the city, it's complete devastation.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that your family is all right then in that case.
Yeah, thank you.
So we talked there about Valencia. What about Spain in general? What do you think have been the biggest positives that you've experienced since moving to Spain? And what do you think are some of the challenges that you faced since moving to Spain?
Ooh, interesting. I've touched on this, but just broadly, as a really big pro, it is just much more family friendly in general. I think maybe in the UK, this is my personal view, but it's a little bit difficult to be out and about with your kid after 7 p.m, maybe take them to a restaurant. There are certain ones you can go to, but here it's just, as I said before, you see like whole generations out, sometimes too late with the kids, and we've now got into that habit as well, but I think that's good. We swung one way rather than the other, but it's really nice to be able to have that option, to be able to go out together rather than always having to, hide the kid away after 8 p.m. As I said, I really think it's a healthy and like beautiful thing that Spain has, that you see whole families out together and, grandkids looking after their elderly grandparents in the park, taking them out and things. So I think it's a really nice thing to see in Spain, and they really appreciate sort of children in shops. We, in a way that I think in the UK we definitely do, but maybe not in the centre of London. Everyone's a little bit jaded, so that's been nice to appreciate. Of course, being outdoors all the time, and I think people here, the obvious one, they have an amazing way of approaching life, right? People don't live to work, they work to live, and it's good to turn that on its head and just experience like a slower pace of life, even though that sounds kind of typical thing to say. It's completely true. Yeah, I definitely feel that as well. About the work-life balance thing. Just being in the country itself like gives you the mindset shift, as opposed to being in the UK where it is very work-centered. There's obviously the US, which is a whole nother level. Yeah. But definitely in Spain tends to lean more towards the work-to-live side, like you said. Yeah. Maybe on challenges, because you also mentioned that. This is pretty child-specific, but I would say maybe the UK system is complicated to a Spanish person. I'm sure that's the case, but coming from the UK, the Spanish school system seems pretty confusing. There's a lot of different options and types of schools that I had not anticipated, and some of them are associated more with, religion, maybe not religious education, but that is certainly an influence. Catholic schools. Yeah, but even some of the public schools that are not necessarily concertados, which are more Catholic, they could have some bent to it. So it's just like a question: do you want that? And if not, what are the other options? And not all of them are like that as well. So that's just a whole new world, basically. It can tend to be quite bureaucratic. I mean, we've explored a couple of things I've experienced, but even things like we changed our driving licenses, and wow, that was also a long process with a lot, I think part of the thing is that with the bureaucracy, it's actually not that it takes a really long time in my experience, it's that it's not clear like what is the process. Whereas I come from a place where like this very stepped out. And I feel like here sometimes you could ask 3 different people and get three completely different answers, which is just disconcerting. And I mean, Spanish isn't a challenge as such. I speak, but I imagine moving without speaking anything, that would be tough. And I note that a lot more in Valencia. I imagine people speak English a bit more in Madrid and Barcelona. And my view is that shouldn't be the expectation, right? Like I moved to Spain, I should speak Spanish. That's not everyone's view. And I often wonder how do people take the leap to move here without being able to speak the language of the country? That must be really hard. So,
Yeah, I definitely, like I say in every video, like I recommend like learning the language before coming over here. No, I agree with it. Honestly, it's not that I agree with the challenges that you put forward there. Yeah, in Madrid, because I came here speaking Spanish anyways, like I don't, it's difficult to evaluate like the level of English, like the times when I've been around family or friends that don't speak Spanish. I've often served as a translator, so I haven't seen that much of the English level. But yeah, that's my observation.
Yeah.
And so what tips would you give to someone who's looking to move to Spain, Saira? Maybe particularly someone from the UK or from the US or from a non-EU country. Okay.
Well, we just touched on it, but I think it's really important. If we didn't hit the message before, it's try and learn some of the language, particularly here. I guess if people move to smaller places as well, it really helps integration into society, and I think just helps you feel better as you move and know what's going on. I think in preparing and sort of deciding if you want to move, you really have to think clearly about your priorities as a person or a family or a couple. You're going to have to make some trade-offs, whether that's in salary, whether that's in maybe working remotely when you haven't been working remotely before and you enjoy working with a team in person, and making decisions about whether you want to move with a job and have that security or not. I think that's difficult because you kind of want to just like get to the end bit where you get to live in Spain, but there's a lot to figure out. So try and figure out the priorities is how we did it. And then I would say, this is going to sound weird, but definitely engage with some magical thinking, right? Like people use the word manifestation. I think that's a bit overused, but I think like it can be a big leap, right? You go from living in one place with one job to a completely different place where you don't know anyone and trying to get a new job. And I feel like we met rightly probably some like people trying to help us, friends and family, saying like, are you sure that you want to do this? But so if we hadn't sort of believed that we could do that and it could work out, we might not be where we are now. So you kind of got to back yourself, I think, is another way of saying it, because a lot of people rightly will be questioning maybe if this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I love that last one. It's something I talked about in a video where I reflected on like my 20s, and I said like one of the biggest lessons I learned is that if you really want to do something, like you'll find a way to do it.
Yeah, totally.
Obviously, like there is maybe the one impossible thing that can't be done, but I think in 9 times out of 10, you can, like, if you really want something, you can find the way to do it.
I totally agree. I feel like I could do a whole other discussion just about that. Really,
exactly,
it's important for people to believe that they can do it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. Great. Well, Saira, this has been really good. Thank you so much for everything you shared. We always finish on a fun question for the guests on the podcast. And your fun question is, what things from the UK that you can't get in Spain do you miss the most?
Okay, I'm ready for this. Convenience. I miss convenience. I think I've come from, I miss like apps where of course you have apps here, but how many times in the last year have I picked up the phone to make an appointment rather than just like do it on a web reservation thing or booking app or and I remember the first week that we moved here, I ordered something on Glovo and just it was a complete mess. It didn't arrive and I thought, oh my god, like what's happened? I can't even order food. I just wasn't used to that. So
Yeah.
I just miss the convenience. Like you step out the door and everything's kind of there on your doorstep. I don't think it's quite as set up like that. It also means people are less in their phones, but you know, I do miss a bit of the smooth convenience. I'm going to say something really British here, which is a bit pathetic, but Marks and Spencer's food hall. I miss everything. Just everything that you can get there, I would say. And then maybe last one, I love Spain, but customer service, you met with a smile a lot more often, I think, maybe in the UK. And I miss that a bit sometimes as well, yeah. You can get it in Spain, but it's a bit less common, I would say.
The thing I find in Spain about customers, we'll talk customer service first. So obviously, disclaimer before everyone comes at me in the comment section again. Like, Spain is its own way and has its own way of working in terms of culture. But like, you can be at like the supermarket checkout, waiting to scan your items or something. And there can be a conversation ongoing between the cashier and another co-worker or someone else. And like they won't do your items until that conversation is finished. Like in the UK, like they'll drop everything and they'll scan your items straight away. Whereas in Spain, it's like, no, you'll wait until this conversation is finished, then we'll do this.
Right.
That's been my experience here.
Yeah, and that's a good version of it, right? There's other ones where they make it very clear. For example, they've been like rotated to work on a Sunday and they don't want to be there, and you're like, not actually my fault. Like, yeah.
I haven't experienced that one, but that's an interesting one that you say. Yeah. And then M&S is a good one as well, because I not that I went like often when I was back in the UK, but then we went to Gibraltar with my wife and my brother-in-law earlier this year, and then when we were on honeymoon in the UAE, like we went to M&S and bought like biscuits and shortbread, and I was like, oh, this is good stuff.
Yeah, the taste of home.
That's it, yeah.
And biscuits.
You know it, yeah. Perfect. Well, Saira, thank you again so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jonny. Really good to chat with you.
Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that episode, guys, and found it helpful and inspirational. Remember, if you'd like to support the podcast and the work that Millennials Money does, then you can do so by signing up as a member via YouTube or via Patreon. And in return, you'll get access to some exclusive benefits as a thank you. And with that, the Multinational Money Podcast signs off for 2024. A big thank you to everybody who's watched the podcast, listened, and supported this year. It really means a lot. And I really hope that from the range of guests we've had, you've been able to take something from it, apply it to your own life, really leverage the information, knowledge, and insights to live your best life. So till next time, happy 2025, everybody. I'll see you on the next one, and let's get this money.